Cheers, everybody, and welcome to the 34th episode of your favorite late night hash cast. It is Variables, and tonight we've got a couple special guests. We've got a returning for the third time, our first third time returning guest, Racer X, joining us tonight, and our guest of the evening, SharkMouse Farms. Superior, would you like to introduce our guest, please?
Yeah. So SharkMouse started playing around with growing as a teen back in 2000. Really got serious about 8 years ago. Started finding conflicting information like most of us. A lot of anecdotal evidence as to why we do what we do at each stage of growth. So in 2017, he started his IG account with the purpose of providing easy access to peer-reviewed data on the biology of cannabis. His daily updates provide an insight into the science of growing, detailed information, linked publications, and the like. And like any true scientist, he's always pushing to find a better way. He's got a background in forensic investigations. He's made it his mission to put together the pieces of the growing puzzle for us. So welcome, SharkMouse. Thanks for being here.
I appreciate you guys having me on. Thank you very much. It's nice to be here and got my cup of coffee ready to go, so we can get into it.
So, first question of the night, SharkMouse, why do you hate organic growers? No, I'm just kidding.
Backstage, we were talking about making trolling great again. I don't know if you guys noticed.
Yeah.
Oh shit! I'm sorry, I had to, dude. Okay, so one of my favorite questions to ask guests that I'm like, not necessarily friends with, that I'm maybe follow or whatever, and there's certainly been quite a few on here, like Racer X down here. Him and I can sit down at dinner and have a discussion, and we're close enough that physically, literally close enough that we can sit down and do that. You and I, SharkMouse, we're just kind of getting to know each other, and I want to know a lot more about your background now. Superior Buzz just told us that you started growing in 2000, which is pretty much a decade longer than I've been growing. And I know Superior's got some years on me too, but I want to know about the first time you smoked weed, man. Do you remember?
I do. This is like fun. Actually, so there's a bit of a precursor to this, because like my first time wasn't actually my first time. I was with one of my best friends, longtime childhood friend. We'd come up together. And we were away out of country visiting our family together. And one night we had just gone out. We were like heavy into skateboarding at the time, and we were just cruising around the city, looking for trouble or whatever it is we were doing at that age. I think we were 13 or 14. And we had the bright idea, like let's get some weed and smoke. Like we had older friends at the time, so like we knew that that's what they were doing, and it was always like they made it just out to be like the coolest thing. So we went and found somebody's cousin who knew somebody's whatever, and we waited I think 2 hours, and we had $10 on us, and the guy finally met us, and he gave us his bag, and I'd never seen weed before, and it looked like leafy plant material. And cool, awesome, but no problem. And I didn't even know how to smoke at the time. So my friend, he's like, we take the pop can and we stab it with a bunch of needles, and we went through the whole thing. And we sat down on the curb, and we lit it up, and both of us vomited right there on the spot. And I remember like pretending I was so stoned as fuck, but turns out it was just tea, chamomile. If I'm
oh no.
So that actually put me off for like a good year or so, and then I was back in Canada driving around with my friend Mike Ellie, who at the time was a few years older than me, had his driver's license, and he was like one of the cool kids, and I was hanging around with them, and they had gone and grabbed a dime of whatever, just like the trashiest street corner flower you could imagine in 1998 or whatever it was, somewhere around there, 98, 99. And I didn't get to smoke on that. So after everybody had left off, I was like super disappointed. And, I begged him to go back, and then just he and I sat in the parking lot, and he rolled it up, and I watched him so intricately. And he told me all about like how it had to be ground properly, so it would burn and it was a whole experience for me of like this world that I had never been introduced to. And I was being introduced to it by all these cool kids. And here I am with the coolest of the cool. And it's just he and I getting some like, that one-on-one friend bond time. And it kind of changed my perspective on, sort of the community around it, I guess. And that was what enthralled me about it in the first place. It wasn't the high, it wasn't the the art of smoking or whatever it turned into eventually. It was just that tool that allowed me to come closer together with my friends. And that obviously developed as you go through high school to the point where, it's now starting to become a bit of your identity, right? And that's sort of how it progressed for a while.
Damn. So are you telling me it was only like a year or two from the time you smoked for like the first time to the time you started growing?
So I didn't technically. My stepfather had always been growing in my backyard.
Okay.
I had never known what it was. And when once that had happened, I started, like I said, the progression started to snowball a little bit more and more and more. And I had started, grabbing an ounce and diming it out, and chopping to my friends at school, and it was becoming a thing for me. So when I'd finally sort of worked up the nerve to insinuate to my stepfather that, like, hey, I'm, oh, good. That I have a pretty heavy interest in this, and I already know what it was, and I guess from his perspective, it's better he learn it from me, and we're here at home,
right.
You know what I mean, as opposed to going out and like, figuring it out somewhere else that he has no control over. So from there on, it was every spring we'd go out and he'd sprinkle a few seeds that he had found in the bag or whatever, and I do remember them now, looking back, just like them being these twiggy, stringy plants, and whatever we would flower off them was just like this larfy, all leafy stuff that we would throw in the garbage now. But
Right.
I think the very first time that I saw him, go out and chop the plant down, and then he brought me back into the shed or whatever and hung it up in the dark, and like that was like such a wow moment. Like, I want to do this forever. That's super cool.
Dude, that's what I wanted you to break down a little bit more for us, because I didn't grow up in a household that like had someone growing cannabis actively. Now, my dad, before he had me, not too long before me, I'm pretty sure has told me some stories about him, growing, and even as far back as like when he lived with his mom, like trying to grow on the, by the railroad tracks out back kind of thing. What was it like for you though, like experiencing that like for the first time? You just told us about like going out into the, to harvest for the first time, but even to like see that for the first time, you said you knew he grew, but you didn't really know what it was. Like, how does that all come together?
I had such an epiphany one day. After that time where I told you I had smoked with my friend Mike in the car that night, I smelled it. He lit it up, and I know what the fuck that smell is, and I've been smelling it my whole goddamn life. I always saw my stepdad go out on the porch, and he would smoke cigarettes with my mom, not realizing that he was going out and rolling up these little one papers on the John Player blue roll-up papers or whatever, with these like massive chunky filters. And the minute he sparked that up, I knew what he had been doing for like, the past decade and a half. And I have visceral memories from when I was 5 years old of that smell hitting me in the nose.
Oh, wow.
Why does it suddenly smell like dad in here?
Exactly. That is exactly what it was. Like, I had a, whoa, you know what I mean? And I don't even think I vocalized it in the car or like even to him for a while, but like, I remember having just like that motherfucker kind of moment,
That's hilarious.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Like the smell and sound, right? They're like one of the most memory-inducing things or whatever. And
yeah, I still like there's some crazy olfactory triggers that happen. Like you'll be walking in a random corner of your house and be transported back to 10 years old in a specific memory at the McDonald's after his birthday party, and like, where did that come from? So yeah, it's crazy how all that ties in together. And while we are going to definitely get into our sense of smell and the olfactory condition that we all suffer from, it is pretty amazing how our brains are able to make those kind of correlations.
It's really
100%.
impressive, especially when we're not doing it consciously. You know what I
Right.
mean? It's just like acting on its own, if you will, which that's
Well, and again, I think we've evolved to make so many split decisions in fractions of a second that being able to tell the difference between a noxious gas versus a pleasant edible fruit is pretty useful tool to have.
Bright colors, right?
Yeah.
That's why I like my
Don't
sulfur
eat the frog. Or do eat the frog, depending on what you're going for, or I don't know.
I was gonna make a joke about licking frogs, but we'll just move on.
That's where I was at with the.
As long as you're mocking it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Touche. You know, gotta play by the terms of service, if you will.
Wait,
Which-
now we can't. Now I can't lick a fucking animal.
No, you
not
aren't
unless
here.
you're
I'm going. I'll be
walking.
right back. I'm going to get my fucking cat.
You better do it live.
No, but the
Good thing the IG stuff didn't work tonight.
when Pedro pops back, I think it's worth talking about that TOS stuff that we were talking about a little bit before we started there in the social media aspect of
Yeah,
it.
for
and how
sure.
there's the cat. There
And
we go.
Hairball.
Delivered as promised.
There's
But
some
yes.
people that are going to be so ridiculously turned on in chat by that.
Yeah, link in the bio.
That's where you're going. Yeah, Lincoln.
Pics in bio.
Yeah, so that's a pretty interesting, I think, topic as far as what we're all doing and how we're being pigeonholed into this secret little corner where no one's allowed to know what we're doing, as if not only that we're doing some type of criminal enterprise activity where the potential viewership is being harmed by our activities. I think the problem is that I've got 90,000 followers and I can get 3,000 likes on a post, but 99% of those views are going to come from people who already follow me. So in order for me to try and reach people who may be interested in the content I provide, it's completely out of my control to be able to do that. And Instagram's justification for that is because I'm encouraging the use of regulated goods, which I've read through with a fine tooth comb every dot and I of those terms of service, and I stick very well within them 90% of the time. There are times where they flag my shit, and it's like, yeah, okay, I get it. Like, I'm in here talking some shit, and rightfully so. But there's other posts where I'm talking about osmotic pressure, and nowhere in the post will I mention cannabis. Will I encourage the use or consumption of cannabis? There's no consumption happening in the post. It's strictly a biological description of a certain function of the plant, and even having conversations with live people at Meta saying and explaining the situation, they'll explain that we reviewed it. Sorry, it goes against our policies, without any recourse or any other explanation. Whereas I'm sure you guys have come across the exceptional amount of near nudity and guns and alcohol consumption, and there's a lot of how many people I see die on Instagram every day.
I've
Unfortunate
heard
that once your account get flags, that's what they look at. They don't look at, and they don't necessarily review each individual one. I've clicked on a review and had it back within 10 minutes. You can't tell me that there's any efficiency that exists, that they're actually looking into that. So I don't believe for 1 second that they're actually looking into our accounts. It's that our account is flagged, and that is what it is.
I just noticed today I have a review from it's over 9 months ago that hasn't been reviewed. You know what I mean? And it's one of those things where like you have to submit a review within 90 days. Like, okay, so I've done that, and now I have to wait 300 days to get a response, or what?
I've been very important, I think, we all need to sort of realign our perspective on what it is their intention is, like Instagram, Meta, Facebook, X. We're not the customer, we're simply the product. And when they've got 110 million new products every day, when a couple are fucked up, it's cheaper for them to scrap it and move on to the next few million, right? We're just broken toys at the end of the day, as far as they're concerned. Why hire somebody to man a keyboard or a phone when fuck it, he's going to make a new account anyways for the advertisers to see.
And especially if the community causes problems, right? Mass reporting, that type of stuff. Like if you're very vocal and you take 20% of their resources, but you provide 0.5% of their revenue, you just don't make ROI.
Exactly. So, and that's such a fantastic point, is that Instagram is a multinational corporation with shareholder expediency, and they've got a fiduciary responsibility to them and them only, not us. We we are the polished product, right? So it's on us, I guess, to keep ourselves correct and make sure that that I guess we're staying quote unquote in line.
In line, exactly
In
that.
line
Well,
with what,
let's take
though?
their fucking
Yeah.
policies that they're not going to explain and they're not going to be upfront or transparent with or anything else they do.
Nor
And
enforce
it's
with any level of equity whatsoever.
No consistency. Cookies
right.
can do whatever cookies can have a cannabis gun,
Herb Buddy,
advertise it, and then
Yeah,
if you want to
exactly.
talk about actual flower,
and give it
you
away.
get
Hold
slapped.
on, and give it away. And
Yeah,
give it
yeah.
away.
Yeah.
Well, if I've learned anything from our pre-show and this show so far, all I have to do is either A, say it's for educational purposes, or B, say it's some sort of parody or mocking
Mock
of
it.
some
This
sort.
is-
Yeah. I'm just
This
trolling,
weed
guys.
sucks. Weed is stupid.
What
It's
if we
no
just
longer not for
what if-
sale? I'm just trolling, guys.
what if we just go to them with what we know is, hey, who can I pay for you to leave my account alone?
So I brought up, were we doing this live? We were talking about Two Turnt Tony. There's a few of them, Will Survives, Two Turnt Tony, and Liver King all work or are all contracted through one specific media agency that clearly has some pull. So
Yeah.
there is obviously, we're just people throwing our stuff into the ether.
You got to
And
know the person.
there's an organized element to this.
Signed
that
influencer.
works it.
That's why I just keep fighting, man. I've been doing this for a minute. I've been doing the educational standpoint and kind of taking your standpoint, SharkMouse. People deserve to know what they're doing, know what they're smoking, know how to make it. And so I started teaching them how to do it a long time ago. And I just kind of take the stance that I'm going to keep doing what I do, and you'll find me when you need to find me. I just recently, over the weekend, found out that I have fucking Reddit chats, Reddit forums about me. I had no idea.
Yeah, Reddit's a fun place.
Yeah.
That's literally where I got my start in this
Me
whole
too.
social
I've
media
never fucking been on Reddit.
Cannabis.
Reddit. So when it comes to Reddit, especially for me, I think there's a lot of discourse and nobody's actually really interested in everybody on Reddit just wants to have the right answer. Where I think at least on Instagram, people are open to different concepts and open to understanding people's point of views, a little more tolerant in the sense. On Reddit, it's you'd better come right or you're getting.
I used to describe Reddit as the asshole of the internet.
I was going to say, you're telling me that I definitely do not want to be there. So
No,
It
not
is
a
the
good-
ultimate hive mind, bro.
Yeah, it's a snake bit. Yeah, for sure.
You
I
have
real
already
quick,
can't
while
stand some
we're-
of the stuff that I come across on Instagram, so I'm not even going to try
So
to fucking
what is good about Reddit is that, like, if you're willing to wade through the bullshit, there's really good information in that comment section because there are some really smart people that go there.
Yeah.
It's just it's
a
like
lot of
going,
reading.
it's
I
going
know the noise.
TJ
I have a
Maxx.
family.
You'll find something if you're like sitting there through the rack for 4 hours, right?
Right.
I have a family. I can't do that.
That's where you start looking at the settings in your phone that show you the screen time, and it goes app by app, and you're like, ooh, I spent an hour on Instagram today, shit. And then you look at the Reddit app, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm just gonna turn my phone off now.
Down.
Yeah. Hey, real quick, I'm gonna share the one I have prepared, but where else can we find you? Why don't we get all these plugs in now, and before Instagram or whoever deletes us next?
Yeah, so honestly, you can find me under most platforms. I think I've got X on there. I am building a YouTube. The pages exist, and it's SharkMouse Farms. There's not really any content on there, but I am absolutely most active on Instagram. I'm currently working on putting a book together. You can find me on my website, sharkmousefarms.com.
There you go.
That was a good post you brought up. We're gonna need to talk about that one later.
Yes, I am.
I love that one. I love my ideas being challenged, and something that I've known, as quote fact for 15 years. All of a sudden, you showed me I was wrong and explained why, and it
caused some consternation. I'll tell you that much.
Let's share it. I'll share it. I think I'll be able to. You should be able to get the audio here.
Dries in which type of environment. If you've got a soaking wet sponge, it's going to dry out really quickly for the first little bit. and then the middle of that sponge is going to take forever to dry out. If we dry at 60 degrees, that surface water is going to get pulled out. And now we're at the exact same temperature trying to pull that middle water out, which is taking longer and longer and longer to get out. In order to mitigate this, you would obviously think, well, why don't we just dry it quicker? A lot of the complaints there are that terpenes are volatile and they off-gas, and that will destroy the flavor and the scent of your dried flower, and that you'll get chlorophyll not being broken down and getting locked in, leading to a hay taste. All of the data suggests that if you dry your plants in absolute complete darkness, the chlorophyll molecule begins to break down within 18 hours, and over the course of 3 days, exponentially breaks down more and more and more and more. If we start drying our plants in the dark and at 70 degrees instead of 60 degrees, all of that water starts to come out within the first 18 hours. So now the chlorophyll starts breaking down, and we move on to step 2 of drying, where it's no longer that surface water, it's now the inside water. So if we kick up the temperature, which is still not off-gassing our terpenes based on the study, we can now pull that internal water out even quicker, but it keeps it at a constant rate because it takes longer to get from the middle to the outside. What we end up seeing is that over the course of 5 days, we step down from 80% moisture.
Okay. First of all, I gotta say, you're Canadian, right? Because you said "oot" about 12 times in that, and
How do you not know SharkMouse is a Canadian?
I did a reel the other day, and I caught myself off guard. I even had to put it in the caption, like, well, I listened to that back, and I didn't think I had a Canadian accent, but goddamn, like it was
every now and then.
Superior Buds is as close to Canada as you can get, and he doesn't have as much of an accent as you. So I mean,
just about.
Exactly. Go play some hooky. I got so for all of our Canadian guests, I do have one question that I have to ask.
Shoot.
Do you know what the only major United States city to lie directly north of the Canadian border is?
It's in Minnesota, and it would be Duluth.
It's Detroit, Michigan, directly north of Windsor, Ontario, Canada.
That's true, because I lived in Toronto, and I know that the Peace Bridge is right
there you go. There you go.
Well,
I should have known that. Good for you.
Yeah, not far. You got a passport?
Yep. I can see Canada.
So I'm actually I'm close. Like I go to Buffalo relatively often and through Niagara Falls or whatever. So
nice.
It's only 2.5 hours from my house. Get down, getting a little more west towards Michigan. There only a couple more hours, but it's definitely doable for sure.
You do that on rides? I see you ride ride motorcycles.
I've been to Niagara Falls on the bike. It's a bit of a haul, like it's on the sports bike for sure, like 3 hours.
Yeah.
Kind of, I'll take a nice little nap after that, but I've done it.
Hell yeah.
All right, so let's get back to the 60-60 myth, if you will call it, because I'll be quite frank, that's kind of like where I'm operating at still, is in that range. And I know I hate to be the first one to say it, but there's so many variables that go into it. And one of the things that I can think of right off the bat is, the thickness of the cola, right? Are we talking, our nice, not to hate on anybody, we've all been there, but our small closet grow tent size nugs that are the size of my, thumb or something like that? Or are we talking maybe an outdoor plant that's literally the size of some people's.
If you scroll back to the last flower post I have, you'll see the size of nugs I'm talking about, because I did it with, and they're donkeys. Here's the thing. There's 2 steps to drying, as I was discussing, right? You've got your first stage where all that surface moisture is really easily accessible to the outside air. Regardless of how big your flower is, yes, there's going to be a higher moisture content. But the pressure gradient between the vapor pressure in the air and the diffusion of the moisture in the flower is going to be a constant, whether the bud's this big or this big, right? Like thermodynamics only goes both ways. So the water is going to get pulled at an even linear rate, regardless of how big the flower is. Now, obviously, again, if you've got a flower that's that big and thick, like it's going to take a few days longer to pull the water up from the middle, just based on travel size alone. But when we're talking, a difference between a flower that size or a flower in that range of thickness, which is your home grower's average, whatever, right? And, a facility grade flower, there is negligible difference when it comes to the pressures that we're drying our flowers at, which when we do it at 60-60, so here's what's happening is that first part is still taking a significantly longer time than what my parameters are at, which are at 72 degrees, and a lower RH in the mid 50s. You're getting a wider range dew point separation than you are at 60-60. So the dew point numbers are super important here, but it's how far away from that actual dew point that your temperature is, and that range in between that dictates the efficiency at which the water moves out of the flower. So if we're moving the flower out at 60-60 for 14 days straight, that first step is water is going to come out at a linear fashion. And once, like a straw through water adhesion, once that pressure isn't no longer strong enough to pull the water away from the water that's holding on to the rest of the water, we now enter step 2 of drying. And now we're in active diffusion. So water needs to diffuse out to the different layers of flower through a principle called Fick's law.
Which just means it's basically moving through the plant material, if you will, from the stem area, you know, kind of the center towards the outside of the plant, because it's trying to even the moisture throughout the plant, right?
Wicking.
It's moving through water adhesion instead of vapor pressure at this point, right? So the pressure of the air is no longer pulling on the water because it broke that chain, right? The first layer of water was pulled out too quickly, and water adhesion couldn't hold on to the bonds within the flower. They broke. Now the water's got to move out slowly on its own. So you've got this first part. So we're drying. You break that chain, and now our drying is no longer in a linear fashion. It's going slower and slower and slower, which is why it's taking us 14 days to get to that point. Whereas if we can come up during that second phase and pull the water out still at a consistent rate based on the diffusion, right? So we never end up breaking that chain, and the water's always just pulling out. And then what we see is that over the course of 5 days, we're down to our active water or our water activity of 0.64 or 0.68, whatever we're trying to target. And we're doing that without a significant loss in our secondary compounds. The study I refer to specifically shows that while we do obviously lose compounds with an increase in temperature, that degradation is nearly nothing compared to the degradation we see in any condition over the course of 2 weeks. So the length of time that plant is exposed to oxidants, oxidization, light, ambient temperatures, it's going to see a significantly higher loss in secondary compounds than it would just with the induction of a few extra degrees heat to dry it faster, if that makes any sense at all.
It does, but now I want to question how it's stored, because one of the benefits, I will say, of that kind of 60-60 range is you can leave it on the stem hanging in that dry room for 2 weeks, no problem. And in my opinion, I'm not seeing, you know, again, without the scientific evidence, I'm not seeing much of a change, and it allows me to kind of crop, you know, to fully harvest, fully manicure it, if you will, when it needs to be, when it's ready, when the customer's ready, right? That's we're not talking. That's not applicable to a commercial type situation. I want to make that clear. But that's probably what you're more going for, is that optimal, you know, turnaround time.
So once
you get to storage, I want to talk about that too. Sorry, go ahead.
No, please. Here's what I'll say about your point specifically being correct, in the sense that, you know, by the time, you know, if you've got 12 plants hanging and it's 5 days on the clock, and now you got to get to trimming, you know, you don't want to leave those extra 11 plants hanging up there for 3 days while you're trimming plant 1. And that's extending your dry time. You're shooting way past your AW, and now we're running into over dry problems, which is going to lead to harshness and complete degradation of your overall profile. In that sense, you're right. You can sort of delay that process along, where your plants aren't, you know, sort of under the gun to get trimmed and into storage immediately. What I'll say is that, you know, once they're dry, you can get them into cure without trimming them as you're trimming, if that makes sense. The notion that chlorophyll somehow leaches back into the buds is kind of a misnomer. While there is a breakdown of that chlorophyll happening, they're breaking down into non-violet volatile fluorescents, CFC blues, and other sort of inert compounds that the plant stores in the leaf vacuole, and then when you trim that leaf, it's gone forever, right? So ideally, if you're in the situation where you can get it off the rack in 5 days and into your storage condition, you're optimizing that secondary profile, that your cannabinoid profile, for when you do have it trimmed, stored, ready to go for the next 6 months until your customers got it going. Curing is a bit of a different animal. I mean, we do definitely want to come back down into that 60 range. Again, we're not, when it comes to curing, there's another whole romanticizing of the process that I don't think is necessarily accurate. When we look at, you know, curing of other consumables, meats and cheese and wine, you're not trying to burp it to remove moisture from it. All we're trying to do is allow the either fermentation process or some of those metabolic processes that are continuing inside their storage container to keep happening over their cycle. What we're seeing with cannabis is that, you know, we dry it down to a specific moisture content, but that moisture isn't evenly distributed throughout the flower. When we put it back in our jar or in our storage container, what we're trying to do is diffuse the rest of that moisture evenly back into the flower and achieve relative humidity equilibrium in our storage container so that nothing's moving back and forth, right? We just want to pull the water right to the outside of the flower so it feels fresh and a little spongy, if you will. And then it's cured. If we have to off-gas and burp our cure jars, it's likely because we didn't hit our dry target appropriately.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, and I don't think this is a big secret or anything, but I like to do that kind of 10-day-ish long, low and slow, because I'm a small scale caregiver. I don't have, such high demand that I got to be flipping packs every 2 weeks or whatever, right? I'm able to
hang on before you jump there, and I don't want to cut you off, but I think it's super important because it's not, based on what we've seen, right? If you've got, we understand, right? The moment we cut that plant down, that count is going down, right? No matter what.
For sure. That's why I'm a fresh frozen guy, dude. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So we can slow it down, but it's never going up. It's never staying stable. It's always going down. So if we can get those plants off the rack quicker and into our storage conditions where we can slow that down even further, as opposed to, like you said, slowing that process down a little bit to be, so we're not overshooting or undershooting, and there's not that fine line that we have to dance. I think we're still, we're losing 5 days, which doesn't really matter in a lot of circumstances, sure. But
I mean,
right.
It
depends on who we're talking to, right? But,
yeah, for sure.
It's 5 days that we're cutting off of our dry time and into storage while it's at its possible highest, right? So again, I don't expect you to take my word on it. What I do encourage you to do is take one plant and utilize the parameters that I'm implementing and that I put up there. Do a COA on the 60/60 and my parameters, and let me know. That's all I can say. And I've had a number of people reach out and say I'm never going back. What I haven't had yet, and it may be biased, maybe I'm not looking at the DMs, I don't know, but nobody's yet come back and said, nah, fuck that, not for me.
I certainly don't have that evidence to go against you of that, and I'm not trying to. What the point I was trying to make is I don't know how to explain this, because what I do is, I do this low and slow, if you will, but I get it to the point where the stem snaps, right? And like, that's just a tell for me that with the plants I grow, it's ready to be thrown in some sort of sealed container.
Sure.
And what I'll do from there is I'll break it down to have maybe a handful of nodes per cutting of stem. And then that all goes into like a curing type situation. With that, I know that there's still moisture in that stem. And that's why I'm leaving that stem on there, because I know that it seems to keep longer, right? Is there a benefit more than I'm seeing to that scientifically, or is, more importantly, maybe, is there some sort of negative to that, and that maybe there's something stored in that stem that we don't want to be necessarily bringing back into the bud to when we're evening out that moisture level?
So not necessarily anything that's moving back into the flower at all. What I tend to advise people is, I used to hang whole the plant for 60, 14 days. You'll find a much more even moisture diffusion process, like we were just discussing, if it's at least bucked down into like individual colas. And that, like, certainly don't mean taking every crow's foot off and laying it all out in a basket or whatever the case is, but getting that main honking stem out of there allows the moisture to move a little more efficiently through each cola and out through the flowers in a controllable fashion, as opposed to there's a lot of those stems are 85% moisture when we cut them down, right? And then the rest is lignin and cellulose. So like you're trying to move a lot of water out of that main stem, which may be another reason for the extended dry period, right? So if we're bucking it down to one main cola with all of its offshoot branches on there, we're going to see a much more even diffusion process. And you'll find that after day 5, while you're not getting the snap and break, you'll get the snap and bend, which is ideally what I'm looking for. It without using either a wood moisture meter or a water activity meter, that break without actually pulling apart and like coming off lets me know that I'm still within my target. Now, when you go to break off a nug from like a crow's foot, I want to see a little bit of, like, I want to hear the nug crack, and then I want to see it peel off the bark a little bit, right?
Okay.
So that's from what I've seen based on, measuring with various different tools to see where my ideal moisture content stands at, and that it tends to be in that pretty tight range. Like once it goes and I can pull the stem apart in two, I have generally overshot my water activity target.
Good to know. I've noticed that this in the last couple days, I went through this whole process that I just talked about, and it's actually sitting in a bin right next to me. But garlic punch, smaller nugs, denser nugs. I get the little,
The little
end of
vegetable.
just the end of the scissor where that node, attaches to the stem. You just do a little twist, it pops right off, right? That's like, I mean, that's when I know I need to throw it in a jar and like actually cure it for, maybe a week, just to kind of like you're saying, even out that moisture level. But the grape fun dip, bigger nodes or bigger colas, I should say, bigger, more nug meat, less frosty, it just is what it is. But, just more nug meat to the nodes. When I went to go do the same exact thing with the scissors, it did that peel of the bark, which to me, I'm normally like, all right, maybe give it another day and I'll come back tomorrow or whatever. Because for me, it's all really about that snap. That's when I know. But I mean, maybe I'm just, I feel like I'm being patient enough, but then it's like, all right, maybe I just need to burp some jars more often or something.
What's funny is that, with the density of the flower is going to be a more cohesive water movement. So you're going to come down to the same moisture content at the end of the day, but because there's so much more surface area to that bigger nug, because there's like more porous spaces in between, right? Mm-hmm. Water's moving from every different direction. So you're going to find a little bit of unevenness within that flower structure itself, as opposed to those beautiful, dense little golf balls that are like, perfect all the way around. And that's just a matter of surface area.
Surface area, atmospheric. Do we talk about this with our extracts, right? Atmospheric exposure is a huge thing when it comes to my live resin extracts, along with heat, right? But oxidization, right? It goes 100%. Along with that too. And yeah, it's like just more surface area. So, but would it, I mean, at what point, we've all seen those like kind of hazy type sativa, if you will, kind of spear shaped nugs that are, not fluffy, if you will, but they're not these little tiny golf balls. Yeah. Is that treated? There you go. Right there.
I love that you, just to step in real quick, I love that you just explained it like that without being provoked, because I'll speak specifically for the the Colorado medical or just cannabis community in general, there's a huge, and I'll go here right now and we can completely shift gears for a second and come right back to this, but there's a huge misnomer, and I'll stand on this, about indica and sativa, revolving indica and sativa. The entire effing market has, and it continues to be miseducated into believing that an indica is going to be something that's going to be sedative and something that they're going to want to take in the evening and or when they just want to relax, and to the opposite, that when they smoke or eat or whatever something of a sativa, that it's going to be like drinking a cup of coffee and it's going to make them productive and this and that. So, while that may absolutely be true, it is not a law, and it does not hold the same, most likely, for even each one of us on the panel here.
The French
Pedro, I got a question. Do you have any sativa carts? Because I can't do indica carts.
Go find one.
What's the highest?
And to be completely honest with you, and unless, if we're talking medicinally, go find one. And that's unfortunately what you have to do. Or you have to completely understand your endocannabinoid system and understand how your body reacts with the cannabinoids and breaks down the terpenes. And
exactly,
you want to talk about variables.
Hey,
just
hold on.
All I wanted to say was that sativa does not mean coffee, and indica does not mean indica couch all the time for everybody. We can continue.
I'm gonna go.
Thank you.
I just want to sit here and do a quick while I write this out, a quick meme for you all. And I don't think that sativa or indica edibles exist.
Okay, so prove me wrong.
Just sit here at my table.
Just keep
Well,
eating.
all right. So maybe something that I try to explain to people, that maybe what they're looking at is like earlier harvested versus, more mature, riper plants, right?
Variable.
You're looking at a higher
CBN.
ratio of CBNs, or like
Maybe.
breakdown cannabinoids, or like just even just higher amounts of decarbed cannabinoids before you're smoking it. Because if you notice, like, if you're talking about cured weed, you talk about anything you pull out of the stash a year later, that's certainly not going to be a bright high generally.
Right.
And it seems to be that spectrum. And so it's like fresh weed kind of tastes brighter. It kind of has a brighter feel to it.
I mean, when we talk, first of all, even when we talk about the origins of this lineage,
it's Doug Benson. It's the comedian. We need to find him.
And we can't even go there without discussing the bastardization of where we're at now with the genetic of the plant, right? So, I mean, if you want to talk about indica or sativa, who the fuck would know anyways, right?
We're not even. I don't even. Can you find one?
If there was, would there, like, by the time we got here with the amount of F1s that have been tossed around, right? What would be be a whole other topic altogether.
Yeah.
But the French taxonomist, or that dude, who sort of coined the term indica, even identified as such that it was like the best of the worst options we have as far as plant identification and speciation, simply because it doesn't take into account the morphological differences of being in different climates, right? Of course, you're going to have short, bushier leaves in a more temperate climate that has higher humidities and such, whereas a more arid climate is going to have long, racy leaves and whatnot. So
that's pretty much my base definition of indica sativa.
But is this not all a symptom of 60, 70, 80 plus years of prohibition that has not allowed science to happen?
Those terms are longer than 60, 70 years.
No, I know. But
we haven't
been able to use modern science to decipher any of these things, to apply any labels, right? We're doing this in garages and basements and backyards.
I've been fighting this indica sativa fight for like 5 years now.
I think
one of the things I hear a lot as a comeback is, do you think that we understand leaf morphology doesn't dictate effect, right? But do plants that come from the Thai region versus another, are they more prone to specific terpenes that then in fact have those specific? So that got me, I don't know, to be honest.
The abiotic factors on the genetic expression itself is absolutely an inherent factor, right? Like we don't have the same soil composition in the mountains of Hindu as we do down on the shores of Thailand, right? They're two completely different abiotic environments with different salinity in the seawater that's coming in versus the amount of nitrates that are being pulled down from the mountain rain. And so, like, regardless, if I took, again, leaf morphology notwithstanding, if I took two identical genotypes and planted them in two different hemispheres on two different land portions, we're going to get two entirely different plants that
results
are absolutely unidentifiable with one another.
And this is, dude, SharkMouse, that is exactly why for a long time I've been preaching that just when especially when you're pheno hunting or you're bringing in new strains into your garden, whether it be indoor or outdoor, honestly, just grow the ones that fit your growing philosophy and style and climate and everything else that you have built, because you're going to have more of a challenge, an uphill battle, trying to fit just this great varietal of strains into one version of it, of what this world can provide. And it's, I mean, maybe now we can get off the climate discussion and start talking about what's in the soil biology or lack thereof, right? And you can control that a little bit greater than you can the climate, quite frankly, especially when it comes to a commercial facility, because you might have zones on the same table, and you might have this fancy schmancy irrigation system that allows you to feed different plants or different zones, different amounts of
volumes for sure.
And everything,
milliliters
down to the milliliter.
I could tell you how many seconds per mill too, if you need.
Me too. On every single one of the drippers, they're all equalized pressure.
So yeah, I mean, how I guess is the rhizosphere more important than the climate around the plant? Do you think?
Okay, here we go. So I love organic production. I think it has a huge place. I think it's got a set of circumstance where it will blow any salt grown, facility grown flower that you can put up against it. But it is a specific set of circumstances that sort of needs to be met versus the other one not being met in order for that to be true. I know tons of great organic cultivators that grow better flower than I do, but it's their skill level.
Layman's terms, are you saying salts are more forgiving than organics?
Yes.
Okay.
Not only that, what I'm saying is they're more controllable, and
dare I say less variables?
There are mitigatable
more controllable variables.
It's a different set of variables.
I'm on board with all of this, actually.
And I think what we're seeing is that nothing can be scaled to mass production from artisanal quality. You can't do it with wine. You can't do it with art. You can't do it with soldiers. You can't do it with cars. I can take my little 10 by 10 room or my 20 by 20 room with my Athena nutrients, and I can pump out the best flower you're ever going to see in your life. And when I try and scale that up to a 100 by 100 or an 80 light facility, I start to lose control of those variables that are making me successful in this small space, which is the only reason I have success in the first place, is the level of control I'm able to maintain over my conditions.
It's not that those aren't controllable at scale, though, right? Is it just take more money, more resources?
Nope. At a certain point in time, I mean, you can throw all the dehues you want in a 80 light facility, and you're going to be met against the heat problem you're creating with that dehumidification. And when you try and handle the heat problem with the dehumidification, you're going to be facing condensation problems from your AC cooling down your space too quickly. It is a limiting factor. Scale is a limiting factor no matter what way you cut it.
I might be able to help with that last problem. We'll talk about that later.
Actually, I was just writing down a note here. I'm going to bring on my master grower. We're
And
running
like-
14,000 plants in an organic system, and he might know hell of a lot more about this than I do.
So
I
and
absolutely will agree that you can lose control of shit after a certain level.
But the wider you scale out, the easier it is to implement a fully organic system that is relatively self-sustaining with minimal inputs from you, other than the observation and the sort of recentering of things as needed. You're not having to check table 1 versus table 6 for PWEC and VWC all feeding at the same content, because you've got one plant that's at 40% and another plant that's at 12% and wilting on you. You know what I mean? Go ahead.
I just want to know, man, and I'm gonna just take your word for this, and I think everyone can.
Mhm.
What is the sweet spot for in terms of lights per room for a craft artisanal product, and what is the sweet spot for lights per room for an efficient commercial facility?
I think if you wanted to really pump a lot of money into a space, I think if you were doing at max 20, 25 lights per room, would be as far as I think you could take that personally. And that's just, again, based on the efficiency, the amount of wattage you're going to have to pump in that space versus your return at the end of harvest. The climatic conditions that you're going to be fighting against the entirety of the time, the amount of individualized attention each plant's going to be able to receive from a moisture content perspective. Because you got to remember, like, especially when we're watering in a soilless media, those plants aren't taking it all in at a perfect linear rate. Plants are drinking at different paces, and when we're riding the razor's edge like that, you have a table fall out of line, boom, that's half your room, right? So I think you try and scale past 20 lights without with more than 3 people by your side helping you out day in and day out to run that operation.
Oh yeah, especially
you're gonna start finding problems no matter what way you go.
I want somebody to help me with 5 lights.
right.
I hear you, man. I'm tired.
Yeah,
What about that artisanal quality though? You know what I mean? Is that like a 4 light, a 10 light? You mentioned 10 lights. I mean,
yes. The smaller you can, the more attention you can pay individually to each metric, each parameter you're trying to control and manage. Each variable you're going to try and manage. The tighter you're going to be able to get those those targets, and the tighter we get those targets, the more exponential results we see. So it depends on your skill level, your level of involvement,
and be clear,
your level of intimacy.
When you're talking about when you say watching or paying attention to, you're actually meaning taking the measurements, making the calculations, like actually putting in the work, not just.
So when people hear that, like, so I get one of the biggest criticism I have is it's easy to push a button and let it go. Well, who do you think writes the program? Who do you think inputs the parameters? Who do you think ensures that the systems are calibrated to the specs that I need them to be, and that the systems are all running off each other and talking to each other correctly?
And looking at your previous day's graph and then adjusting your water timing. Like, they don't understand. Crop steering takes a lot of work.
I do so much math in a day, it's numbing for me.
Yeah.
And it's week to week. I think Superior will take a little bit more of this conversation from here, but how important is automation then when you're trying to hit those targets?
So incredibly, and I like my followers to understand that you don't need all this fancy shit to grow wheat. It's not necessary. Right. It's expensive. It's an investment. I'm down here 12 hours a day, and then I'm up there editing and writing and doing all the things that I need to do to get all this fancy stuff working, right? But what it does give me is, those sort of micro controls over nuanced little things that I couldn't possibly, as a human being, physically manage 24 hours a day, right?
Right.
My VPD doesn't swing. My heat, my temperature, my PPFD, they're always where they need to be. And if they're not, I'm getting instances on my phone saying, "Come fix this," right? And
yeah, Pedro and I
Again,
had a conversation a while back where I had reconfigured how my rooms worked because of what I saw based on my sensors.
Mhm.
So I started utilizing relative humidity from the flower room to bring the veg room up, and then utilizing the heat from the flower room to keep my lung room warm enough, and doing all this. And so we talked, and he rejigged his stuff a little bit and got a little bit more balanced of a graph on his, because you use pulse, right, Pedro? I think. Yeah. So, having that data, it's like you said, you can't feel that as a human.
I've even put some of my heat back into my house at times.
That's glorious. Yeah. That's funny. So yeah, I heat like in the winter. Like I said, I'm in Canada, so it's pretty low here. And having these lights pumping in, like in the middle of the night, saves me on my.
I have electric baseboard heating in my flower room.
I was gonna bring it up.
Yeah, I got 220.
So jealous of that.
Yeah, I 220, 240, whatever the hell it is.
That's so nice.
Yeah, and that's on my automation now too. So the Troll Master's controlling it now.
You hear all the time that I'm doing just fine, and I don't have any of that stuff, and I'm doing my stuff turns out fire, and I get that. Like I understand that's never. I'm never saying to anybody who doesn't implement all of this stuff that your work isn't awesome. All I'm saying is if it's awesome now, imagine where it would be if we tighten that up a little, right?
Yeah, and I guess that's where like the influencer grower like criticism comes from, where it's like what you provide a service to brands, right, as a showroom in a certain in a similar way that like Mango does, like in addition to his grow, like it's a tech demonstration. Absolutely. And I that's entirely fair. I think that like it's in, to hear you say like you do not need like a $5,000 Arroyo sensor in the middle of a tent to grow good weed. Like, I mean, like you don't need it, but it is nice to see that, like, because as legalization sort of progresses in the next 5 to 10 years, I hope home grow still maintains that, like, people are running a series of tents in the basements or blowing out garages and doing stuff at home, or else we're going to lose genetics and we're going to lose tech and we're going to lose like any technical progression, because commercial grows can't take the risk to try stuff like you do, right? Like, or and it's valuable to see this stuff, and I think it's what you do is very, very cool, like what you do with communicating, sort of growing to people, like in a certain way, it's like this old house for growing, right? It's just clear demonstrations or sort of bait into like, you should look into this DIY thing to like apply it at your home grow.
There's a lot of pushback that I obviously get, that I'm a corporate sellout, or I'm a Chad, or and I get where from an outside perspective that can be taken, especially if you're new to the page or you've just recently started following and you hear me shout, hey, Pulse, powered by Pulse, right? Like it sounds like a hockey commercial. That's never my intention, and I'll explain to you sort of what my idea behind what the model was supposed to be and how it's turned out. As you just mentioned, and I appreciate it very much, and I thank you for the kind words. I think I provide a lot of value every time you come and click on a reel. For the most part, sometimes I do a little quirky pushbacks to people or whatever the case is. But for the most part, I think the basis of my pages, every time you click on something, you can leave Instagram, go downstairs and try something in your garden that will immediately improve it. And that's the whole thing, is you watch the video, now it's doing it in my garden. I love SharkMouse Farms. That's awesome, right? And I think, for the value and the level of information I try to provide you, people are out here charging so much money and just gourding people who don't A, have the means, and B, aren't looking to implement it to profit themselves, or just trying to either fulfill a hobby or create some medicine for themselves, and don't have the means to be gouged by somebody looking for a massive $2,000 consultation fee or whatever the case is. Mm-hmm. Where that started becoming an issue was, I've got a family to feed, and I've got to keep all these lights on, and I've got electric bills and water and all this stuff. How do I provide this value to them without taking money from them, and without forcing them to feel obligated to make a purchase or whatever the case is? And the best way I could figure out how to do that was to utilize the stuff I was already finding successful in my space and talking to the brand and saying, this is the amount of value you're getting from every single time I post. 80,000 views every time I press click. And, you know, that's, do you know how
You've
much
collected
money,
the eyes, like,
do you know
massively.
how much money, do you know how much money the exposure my account provides? Let's say Mango as an example would cost Mango to reach those eyes on a traditional Google advertising
The
platform.
value is
Exactly.
incredible for them. Put it that way.
Exactly. So I feel like it's a win-win-win situation for
Yeah.
everybody involved.
100%.
You know, I get to keep the lights on and keep doing what I do, and I don't have to go, you know, work construction job somewhere. You guys get the value. Mango gets to make a couple of sales here and there on the people who want to implement the strategies I'm using, and then go ahead and try and replicate the things that I do to do that. Right. I don't think anybody loses there. So for people to be upset about the fact that, you know, I get paid I get paid $1,000 a month from each of these companies. Okay, that's not a lot of money. I shouldn't tell everybody what I make, but I'm not here trying to get rich off of anybody. I'm just trying to pay the hydro bill for posting a shit ton of, you know, commercials for both the companies
content,
and
man.
giving you guys to go out and do your thing. So
100%
I
totally
do
fair.
get agitated sometimes, but I just wanted people to be sort of clear on where I stood on that. Right?
Can I share with you something funny
Sure.
on that line? So like the sort of strategy of like aggression or sort of engagement farming from like sort of pointed opinions. Like for example, during this whole like Drake Kendrick beef, like the number of people being like, yeah, Drake bodied that, just to get comments on like or the other person. I really don't care who you, but like they would pick the other side just to like bait engagement. More recently, you're familiar with like Cannabis Mechanical, Steve Landry?
Yep.
So like, friend of mine, you know, I've worked with him on you know, reheat setups here in Michigan.
Had him on the show.
Had him on the show. You know, I had dinner with him last week. Like he's, you know, a good friend of mine. On Instagram, he has a tendency of like, you know, explaining himself in a pretty pointed way, and then getting into, you know, flat out flame wars in comment sections regarding like HVAC tech. It's the most nerdy, dorky stuff that like I've ever found myself into, but I find it somewhat delightful.
It's not the most nerdy, bro. You know, it's not the most nerdy.
Oh,
you got so many nerdy fucking things you're into.
Where's the paintball thing? The Dynasty in the background thing? Yeah, shout out Dynasty. Anyways, but the what I'm getting at is seeing the engagement from those, like just being tagged in that. Like I've done a little bit of like little, you know, comment stuff. But this is a whole nother level. There was like 400 likes or 300 likes on a reel yesterday, which is, you know, nothing compared to like some of the numbers I see on SharkMouse. But the engagement that we saw, like the follow through to
versus
my
normal
page, my brand's page, to Armistice's page, it was crazy. And it's like, it sucks because it's from a place of negativity, but that's how the game's set up right now. And so like, and I don't mean to say that you take a negative tack, but you surf it very well. And
listen, it's been a huge learning curve to understand how my audience responds to, you know, various different things I try to implement in my strategy. You had brought up before that, you know, the captions on my videos. I had noticed that a bunch of people were listening to my video or watching my videos on mute and missing everything I was saying. And that when I put those captions in there, the watch time went up to, you know, 60% instead of the 20% that people were diving off the cliff at. And it's just monitoring sort of my viewers' habits and keeping track of those. And like I said, I'm very data oriented, and I'm keeping a close eye on how my followers are behaving to the things I present to them. And I do notice patterns, obviously, and I'll lean into what works. And if it works, I'll try and further that in a different capacity. And obviously, like you said, giving people agency is a huge one. So allowing people to state their own, I know this as a fact, is a huge engagement getter, if you will.
Yeah.
You know, so like if you ask in a post, what do you think the best? Instantly, everybody's got their opinion, and they're boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
It's awesome, and it's huge, and it gives them a chance to feel like they have a voice and they're being heard as well. So it really it boosts morale for them, if you will, as silly as that sounds.
Also,
Go ahead.
pointed, how-tos, like very concise, a how-to video about exactly what you're talking about. Not talking about, what you did this morning and your whole channel and where you should follow and subscribe and everything. But my most watched video on YouTube has like over 1/3 million views, and it's 2 minutes long or 2.5 minutes long. It's how and where to top a cannabis plant.
This is
And that was one of
this is how you do it.
yeah, it's zoomed in. It's very, just clear audio. That's it. And it's a lot of people make that comment on the video. How thank you for not taking 9 years to actually, this is one of the best ones. Thank you for not taking 9 years to explain this video. And it was like 9 years ago that I posted it, and someone came back and said, if you took 9 years, you'd just now be harvesting his plant or whatever.
That was before you knew that you needed 3 minutes to show an ad.
So
right. For real.
If you pay, like when you see my videos, the camera will never be stationary for more than 2 seconds. Boom, 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 boom. Right. And by the time the camera pans here, there's another caption for you to read here. So you as a viewer are having a tough time sort of like focusing away from the reel to scroll, or you're like, what's next?
You just need 2 seconds on Instagram, man. You just need them for 2 seconds, and then that's considered engagement.
Are you Adobe or CapCut?
Depends on what I'm using. I'm using Premiere if I'm using the desktop, but CapCut's super powerful for mobile.
I've loved CapCut in the last year. It's been a game changer for me.
Yeah,
I've always wondered, because your editing is like really great. Like,
I appreciate that. Thank you. And you can definitely achieve that with CapCut. Using a lot of speed ramps and clean transitions through the next scene or whatever. So people never want to feel jarred when they're watching a video. So like you gotta move it, but it's always got to be nice and smooth. And like I said, that was again a not very clean curve upwards as far as learning goes. That doesn't work. Let's try that thing, right? There's been a lot of instances where you see that doesn't work, scrap it and on to the next one.
I will say though, you have such a following that you have, I have a background in marketing. It's like the more, the bigger the sample size, the more informative and accurate that data will be. And you have such a large sample size that when you're actually looking at these analytics and things, you can make real decisions, based off of real data. I will say a couple of things here. We're not really paying attention to a whole lot here at the Variables Podcast. I'll be honest. We're putting this podcast out with some incredible guests and some incredible conversations that last 2 hours nearly every week, every Friday night. We're 34 weeks in here, or 34 episodes, I should say. Posting to X, multiple channels on X, on Twitch, on YouTube. Hopefully going to get it on Instagram here once we figure that whole situation out. But we haven't done a single drip of monetization in this whole thing. But I will say, man, there's no shame in that. And I think, Racer X brought up Dynasty behind me, this beautiful bunker I have signed by the World Cup Dynasty team like fucking 15 years ago or something like that. Somehow it's still inflated. That thing must be quality. But I got my first sponsorship at like 13 or 14 years old through paintball. And I don't think there's any shame in that, especially because at that time I didn't have any fucking money. So like it took, a lot of chores and a lot of work to save up to just buy, something to play with. And of course it's like, you got to start practicing, you play, competing, and it takes a lot of money. So I had to find a way to make that work for, myself and my team. Here, gosh,
what I think
15 years later or something like that, we found Pedro and myself on the GrowTube, and I think we were at least partially responsible for bringing Pulse to market. I mean, we were, I think, one of their first.
I'd like to think so.
Yeah, and say again.
They didn't get on with you guys?
No, we were like, I think probably the first sponsorship. Yeah, like we're talking like 2017.
Yeah, this is a long time ago.
Yeah, they're like the original edition and stuff. We had them on our podcasts and stuff, and like that, like a shameless sponsorship. They provided us all with the devices. We got to use them and test them, and it was like a game-changing thing at the time, and certainly still is incredible. I just realized Racer X has his paintball mask on. We said paintball too many times, and this is what happens.
He appeared. Listen, Chris is a great guy. Pulse they make awesome equipment, and I think they hold huge value, especially to the home grower for the consumer price point that they targeted, to be able to be accessible to your average 4x4 grower who wants a little more visibility on what's happening in a space.
Yeah,
and
man,
I always commended Pulse for not reaching that, trying to reach that higher echelon of price points where we're going to charge you $2,000 for a sensor, and they could have, but I think they saw more value in being accessible, and that's one of the reasons I chose to work with Pulse, is because it's not, you'll never ever find me using something that doesn't work for me. You're not going to find me telling you to go get something that you're not watching me use, right? I've got lots of stuff here that people send me over the years that will never make it to camera, because either A, the claims are bogus, B, I've given it a look through, and either the build quality of the light or whatever the case is, it's just not something I'd be comfortable recommending to my followers. I had jumped on early with Hydromesh a year ago, and a brilliant engineer. He's an aerospace engineer, and he decided he was going to revolutionize the controller industry and come up with the best automation controller anybody's ever seen. And I was absolutely floored by the product that he provided me as a prototype, but he was never able to make it functional enough for me to continue supporting, in the fact that you're going to end up hurting people's gardens and hurting people's wallets, because the product isn't what it needs to be for the price point it's at. So I'm comfortable telling a sponsor to fuck off if A, they try to get me to say something that I'm not comfortable saying or selling, or B, they're not what they're representing themselves to be. If I told Athena right now that no, I'm not going to say X, Y, or Z, and they said, okay, well, we're not going to sponsor you anymore, I've got a couple more that are happy to pick up the load that I can use, and I'm willing to work with. And again, that's out of sheer necessity to keep providing you guys with the value that I do, while not, adding my channel to Patreon or whatever.
Dude, I'll tell you what, it makes it way more palatable to continue to produce content when you've got someone there supporting you, like monetarily, month after month, and it becomes more than a hobby and more like a job, and I think that's okay, because this is my
full-time job. This is how I put food on my table. This is how my kids eat. This is how my dogs go to the vet. This is how the mortgage gets paid.
There you go, dude. Fuck yeah, man.
And like I said, the option was I could charge $10.99 a month on Patreon. Everybody come check out the reels there, or I could make somebody else pay for it and keep giving it to you guys for free. Now, that being said, I've got options where, like I said, I answer as many DMs as I can in a day. I answer as many comments as I can. I try and be as in depth as I possibly can with as many people as I possibly can. Some people want to spend 2 hours asking me about, their specific irrigation strategy or their room setup or whatever the case is. And I offer paid time for that if they want to do so. The rates I charge are ridiculous. So I don't know if you saw my last reel where I built a whole CAD build out of somebody's garage from scratch and then rendered it in 3D modeling. That's $250.
You had people in there like, hey, we're growing weed. Yeah.
I engineered a grow facility for $250. Like
Jesus.
Come on, guys. I'm not getting rich off fucking anybody.
That's crazy.
I mean, that's why, like, I bought your templates. I have my own irrigation plan, but more data is never a bad thing.
And the support is appreciated. Thank you.
And being able to compare against what I was already doing, it's great. So
Absolutely.
And to support just a little bit, this shit's not cheap to do. There's a lot of work involved, and people don't realize. I mean, my stream, I built my whole stream like a flipping TV studio. My whole grow is a TV studio just because of the cameras.
You know,
The
you
TV
got sound
set,
and
bro.
light. I don't even know. Like trying. That's the other thing. Is like trying to get people to realize that you know what it is to grow full time. It's a full time thing, and here we are doing, midnight podcasts and then editing after, and then doing sound checks, and then all of these interchangeable things that are happening on a daily basis that take me away from being able to go get a job or whatever the case is. So
or fucking take your family out to dinner, you know what I mean,
what
or
are you
your
talking
wife
about?
or whatever. Like, dude, it's the many hats of an entrepreneur.
What is it? Quit your 9 to 5 to work 100
To work
hours a
9
week
to
or something?
midnight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then
Well,
there's
you do, right?
there's also the quote that you find a job, or a job you love and you never work a day in your life. How does that go?
Bullshit.
It's some Confucius thing.
Yeah.
So, know
So
that
yeah.
as much as I live and work and die in the fucking cannabis community, I only get 12 hours maybe a week in my grow. It is not much at
No,
all. It's
those
hours
hours,
a day. It's
right?
horrible.
And I think you know what, like there's a limit to the amount of time I can actually spend doing each task without overrunning one. I am the limiting factor to all of this. Obviously, there's 24 hours of the day, and I'm trying. I'm trying to juggle not only 1, 2, 3, 5 different spaces at once, and I've got to manage DMs, and I spread myself as efficiently as I possibly can, and at the end of the day, this is what the output is. So I'm super grateful for the amount of support that I get. I get respectively a little bit of hate, comparatively speaking, when we look at the outpouring of support that I get from the community. And I think that I personally just have to accept that that's I'm not going to change everyone's mind. Some people just hate SharkMouse Farms. I come across as cocky and arrogant, and I'm not going to change your mind that I'm not a corporate shill for Mango, because that's just how you're going to perceive me.
I love it, dude. What is your most controversial topic that you've brought up? And
Flushing and organics. Easy.
sorry, say again.
Flushing and organics, both of those.
Okay.
So, and here's the thing: is like they get really, really hot all the time, and these are the ones that always get me in trouble. That always lead to the "you don't like my ego" posts. And it's because I don't enter those conversations lightly. Like I didn't just wake up and be like, oh, let's try this today. Like I'm coming prepared. Like I want everyone to know before you get in an argument with me, I'm not going to get into an argument with somebody I'm not prepared to argue with. And this is kind of what I used to do for a living prior to any of this. Tactical communication's kind of my thing, and a large part of that is preparing for the engagement you're about to be in. When I post
sorry. You got is it military something like? Okay. I mean, it's got to be Royal Canadian Mounted, whatever it is.
I'm definitely not a cop, that's for sure. But so what I'll say is
tactical communications.
I'm not coming into an argument that I haven't already thought ahead of. That was like, when I post the organic topic, I've already thought of the first 12 responses that are coming my way to tell me to go fuck myself, and I know what my answer is going to be before you even put your comment in. So like I've got the data lined up, I've got my answer ready to go, and you come in here all hot and emotional, yelling at me because I've just upset the ethos that you've chose to center your identity on. Now, don't take that as an attack. Stop. Let me explain myself for a second. If I'm bringing information about how synthetics are equally, or in some cases more efficient than organic inputs, I'm doing so because of the data I'm going off of, not just because that's my personal feelings on the subject matter. I didn't land on this position because I felt like it. I landed on it because that's where the data drove me to. And I think we as a community have a typical tendency of romanticizing soil in a way, this weird esoteric anthropomorphization of dirt. Soil is super cool. Soil biology is unbelievably complex, amazing. I know enough to know I don't know enough about it, just like the rest of us. That being said, nature's shitty at her job. She's never been good at it. And we have this weird ideology where we look at things through the scope of our own timeline. We as human beings have existed in like this nothingness of a fraction of an instant of existence of the universe, right? So when we see that and we look at, you know, this beautiful interaction and dance between mycorrhiza and rhizosphere and symbiotic relationships and this and that, it doesn't take into account that 99.9% of all living species that's ever existed on Earth has been wiped out because nature's a flawed design, and things that work only work like in the tiniest little peak of this massive curve that keeps going up and down, and we're only seeing this tiny little window. It's kind of like the shadows in the cave analogy. I don't know if you guys are aware, right? But we're only seeing the shadows, not the puppeteers making the shadows, and they're not seeing the person making the fire, et cetera, et cetera. We're seeing this small window of time where things seem to work perfectly for nature, and nature is in this perfect balance with itself. But it's not. It just tumbled in a way that was convenient for what happened to be there in that instance. It's utter chaos and nothing more. And if we stretch out that
I feel like it's absolute competition. It's survival of the fittest. I mean,
Sure.
you make it sound like it's a tumbleweed, you know, blowing through the desert, taking out cacti like by the species or something. Like it's more like, you know, over the course of millions of years, you know, these cacti I've got no analogy from here on out, but you know, it's like I just feel like you're not giving competition enough credit when it comes to nature.
Let me ask.
And it's very easy to see why you're talking shit about organics.
I'm just gonna ask the question like as simple in a simple form to hopefully clarify the analogy.
Sure.
So over the last 4 million years, 4 billion years, let's say, okay, nature has slowly worked its way up to the point we're at now. The universe is, the Earth is 4.5 billion years. Trees are what, 300 million years old? Something along those lines, 400 million years old.
I know sharks are 350 and stingrays are 150 million.
A tiny little fraction of time in that whole time where a whole bunch of shit was happening, where, you know, the symbiosis in the soil wasn't perfect, and where you know, mushrooms didn't have this
competition, adaptation.
So what I'm saying is, if we scaled that out and looked forward 4 million years, is nature still going to look perfect in that sense? Or did that whole system tumble to a point where it's unrecognizable now? And what was perfect for our tiny little time scale wasn't really perfect, but just a momentary blip in time where things just sort of happened to work out for that circumstance, right?
It's perfect now, though.
Right. I think there's both. I think it's both, right? Like
right. So, but what I'm saying to that point is it's perfect now, but only by accident, I guess. And even in that sense, we're going to evolve to a point where she's no longer perfect, and, you know, species are going to get wiped out on every single scale, and that's just the cyclical nature of the way nature works. Things that work stop working. So that's the exact opposite of the definition of perfection, right? What I think is that we have an understanding of what's working now, and we can analyze that through our consciousness as conscious human beings to see what it is that's working and make that more efficient. So the people who argue to me that, well, nature does it perfect, you don't know better than nature, I'll go outside in my forest right now and show you not one single healthy plant. They're all fighting something. Nature works in a curve of just good enough. Can it survive? Cool. Work with that until something takes it out.
Right, which is the constant competition. And it's that something we necessarily have to deal with indoors. And if, we got fungus gnats, I'm going to throw some fucking nematodes at them or something, right? And that's because I'm playing God, and there's no God
That's
that
exactly right.
That can turn the air conditioning down outside on a whim. You know what I mean? And that's the difference is outside, like it's not perfect by any means, but at the current time, it's working. And what it's constantly doing is creating competition and the competition is snowballing to find out what's going to exist next. It's not that things are constantly failing. It's that the things that aren't successful are getting wiped out, right? You can almost just frame it differently and put it in this picture of everything that exists today has been successful, right? And everything that exists tomorrow will be successful, but that doesn't exist today, isn't.
I agree with that 100%. So what I think is most prudent here is that, we can take some of the things we know about what works now, right, and try our best to implement those in a manner that works for us.
But we can improve. That's the difference.
Exactly. For example, we'll use the expression of microorganisms in the soil causing specific genetic expressions to create terpenes that we don't see with the rock wool, for example. And a lot of people will say that there's like some, without an explanation, give me this fantastical sort of explanation about how the soil knows, and this, like, it's very touchy feely and warm and like very sweet thing to hold in your heart, I guess. But at the end of the day, I think mineralization is a real thing, right? Like, what we're trying to accomplish is the breakdown of organic elements into their base ions in order for the plant to selectively take those ions up. Where organics can provide that differentiation, I guess, over that standard sterile rock wool cube, is that those interactions with some of the microorganisms in the soil trigger different genetic responses in the plant based on its abiotic conditions. So what if I took humates and I took fermented grain extract and I took myco and I put them into my soilless fertigation program? What am I missing now?
Yeah, I think that you've got like two. We were talking about it, I think, in the podcast that I sent you clips for, where there seems to be two camps, right? You could almost put them indoor, outdoor, or like sun grown versus controlled environment indoor. Where controlled environment indoor is trying to like isolate and be kind of a space, like a shipping container in space, isolated. They're sealed environments. You're trying to reverse osmosis, purify water to zero, to just get an absolutely sort of pure controlled variable environment.
That's it.
Whereas it's worth it if you can hit your goal, which is either going to be production or quality. You're either going for high performance indoors, or you're trying to go for production indoors where you can outdo outdoors. What's up?
I am I hope I can do this right. We're going to use the super high technology variables podcast software.
How do we do this?
Explain exactly how SharkMouse feels about the different levels of growing. And on the left here, we're going to start with a parabolic curve, and it's going to look a little something like this. And on the left, right about this area is, we'll just call it outdoor. Okay, this is outdoor growing. This is nature. This is nature's competition and evolution, and this is the results that gets you. Now, here at the top,
I don't like this,
is the premier success of all cannabis growing, and we're talking, I think, about 10, maybe let's call it 10 to 8 lights or so indoors. Don't forget, it's got a roof on it. Okay, so we're indoor is where the success is. All right.
Okay.
Now, but at the bottom, again, here at the bottom, which is nearly equivalent to the outdoor, is, yes, you guessed it, your 100 light commercial grows. We want to stay away from that. So I think we've got it right.
Okay,
is that pretty accurate?
So,
yeah. Rude.
No, not a little bit.
You want to the best analogy.
It's like your hat. What's your hat? You said you're just trying to troll. That's what it was.
Organics.
Yeah. Now it makes sense. When I know that you're just a troller, I understand.
But you got the guys who are trying to necessarily like take a plot of land, the traditional agriculture. You're leaning into the pressures that lead into the land, the light, the where the water's going. You're dealing with tile and drain issues. You're using the water that's available, and you're not using a lot of pumps, right? You're ideally using like as little fertilizer as possible to get as much yield as possible. Or you're trying to go for organic and sort of tilling the land to like there's two things. You got quality or you have
So I believe
yield
every
production.
single outdoor direct to soil agricultural facility should be 100% organic. The level of manure, compost, phosphorus, fertilizer specifically, and runoff that's created from modern commercial agriculture is misdirected at me, as if I'm the one who's poisoning the planet with my 50-gallon reservoir of 3 EC water, which is insane.
I mean, how much runoff do you get daily?
all of my runoff is right here.
That's what I'm saying. I have less runoff
Keep
today.
it on
bucket.
So you don't have any runoff?
Zero. It's all sitting right
Runoff
there.
is so minimal in the new crop steering.
So you use it, you reuse 100%, not 99.
I first of all, I reuse all of my runoff. Second of all, the water efficiency I employ with my specific program is second to none. Crop steering in general, we're using 40% less water than organic soil growers are.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that's what I was getting at with indoor, where it's like it's justified on a production scale if you can use way less material.
Sure.
So like if you're producing the same 10 pounds of potatoes, 10 pounds of weed, whatever, but you're using a tenth of the water and you're using a tenth of the pesticides, and there's less drift and less exposure, and let's say you do the calculations of how much electricity that you're using in your grow versus how much diesel it would take to have a tractor take care of that plot of land. Like you're getting into a competitive thing where like you have a justification for indoor where people are like, it's a waste of time, it's not going to compete with outdoor, and it's like, I don't know, man. Like
so
you can get it pretty fine tuned.
I think all of this stems back to, for me, the early 90s and the boys on the hill, and even go all the way up the west coast to BC where I'm from, and that's where it's been. It's it's been the mountains of BC or the hills of California, Northern California in particular, that all of the greatest flour in the world came from, and we've been pumped with that ideology for fucking 4 decades now. And there are reasons why Northern California has some of the best outdoor flower in the world, and it is because of the immense variables that come with that specific climate condition, and with those soil conditions, and the sea air, and all of these different things that we now understand in 2024, and we're capable of implementing inside. Light spectrum, amending our soilless programs with organic materials, and Emerson effects, and photoplasticity, and so many different things that are happening in outdoor plants that are causing them to be so varied in palette and profile. And we simply didn't understand, when we were bringing plants from inside in 2010, we were using our halogen bulbs, and we were going off the information from Roll It Up 420, and every environment was specifically the same, and that was that. And what you were pulling out of the tent was a one size fits all product versus what was coming out of the hills of California, which was this brightly colored, fruity, flavored, very, very potent, very, very acrid flour that you're just not getting from inside. And that's because we're running sterilants with general hydroponics, flora, whatever, and there's zero variation to that program until we started to understand that you can implement far red and infrared and UV and cool light and green light, most importantly, and that the sun isn't 1300 ppfd 18 hours a day straight through the day, and that there's cloudy parts to the day, and when those clouds come in, that the wavelength changes. And if we can implement those things inside, we're running out of arguments now as to why outdoor sun-grown organic is in any way superior. Now,
out of reach of indoor, and it sounds like LED was a huge game changer then, and not just the introduction of LED, but the ultimate efficiency, capability, technology of the spectrums, and all of the efficiency, of course. How much is that playing a role in how you feel? Okay,
I'll step in here really quick because I've been sponsored by many LED companies.
Shut up, Grow Blue.
Yeah, right. I'm running the science LEDs right now. Yeah, they're actually very very programmable, if you will. So as far as speaking to the outdoor, I mean, you hit it on the nose. But for some reason, when I grow outdoor, and I've done that 8 years ago, mind you, I've been making hash since '99 too. So shout out. For some reason, my outdoor is. What's that?
I'm gonna have to get my boy Pele Pelaire to hook me up so I can start making some hash around here.
He's actually supposed to be in chat tonight. I'm surprised he's not.
He's watching. He asked for the link tonight.
Yeah, he asked me for the link. Yeah,
I was chatting with him today a little bit.
Yeah, we're actually doing some
coming to Michigan.
We're actually working together here in the future.
You would notice that with your indoor.
My outdoor is significantly better. Obviously the quantity is out of this world, but my ability to keep my quality significantly higher than my indoor, and quantity through the roof, obviously 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 pounds of plant sometimes. Outdoor kills it 100% of the time.
I had already
let me clarify. My outdoor is not outdoor. I did grow in what I consider a greenhouse. It's a hoop house where I actually control the environment. I control the humidity as much as possible, and I control the temperature, and I also control the admittance of UV as well as much as I can as well. So I did have my finger on some variables.
But I think I'd mentioned two variables there that were critical in your observation, and one being photoplasticity. Right, the sun is never this static. Charge of photons always coming through. It's based on our atmospheric angle and cloud cover and haze and so many other different factors. That sun is hitting at different intensities, different wavelengths, such a massive fluctuation. And this photoplasticity allows your leaves a much broader ability to soak up light as the leaf develops older and older, which one accounts for your increase in overall quantity. But also, the more we photosynthesize, that increase in quantity, as long as you're not allowing that to be a limiting factor, the plant is genetically going to direct its resources to accomplishing both sets of its evolutionary goals, which is resinous trichome coverage for protection, and biomass for reproduction, right? So it's not.
And actually, real quick interjection here on the light topic, because I think it actually fits very well here. After our little argument and whatnot, I looked into my grow, and I actually noticed that one of my grows overnight had a problem, and then the next night, the next plant had a problem. I mean, instantaneously.
That's what you get.
That's what I get. And what I found, because I went back and watched and looked at your posts, I do support, I do watch, I do read.
Well,
I went back and looked at your posts, and you actually educated me that I had too much light for the plant. I had more light than the plant could handle in its roots. How's that work?
Absolutely. I think that works perfectly. And we get to a point where we keep doing this step up with our light intensity. We're going from the 250 to 450 to 650, and every time we make those sudden dramatic changes, the plant will soak up what it's already used to taking up for the day and then shut down on you. When it shuts down on you, not only are you creating those reactive oxygen species and destroying the chloroplast in the leaf as the stomatas close up, you're losing hours on that day now. The plant said, no, I'm
Absolutely.
done.
You're
Check
stepping
out.
backwards. DLI, strongman said.
Exactly. And it will catch back up over the course of the next couple of days. But every time we do that, we find ourselves like, oh, they look a little sad today, and it takes a few days to recover. Whereas if we keep giving it that wild fluctuation in lights from 250 to 450 to 350 to 500 to 400, right? And it's got this chance to soak up a bunch and then acclimate under less stressful conditions to what it just experienced, so that the next time you hit it, it's like, oh, I'm ready to go, right? It's the pre-pump for the workout, if you will.
And unfortunately, in mine, again, not being able to be in there as much as I used to be able, now that I'm running subcontracting jobs and whatnot, I'm not in there as much as I used to be able to. These science are arguably too much for the room. I love the ability to program them, sunrise, sunset, intensities and whatnot here and there.
You got a 750 watt light that you're only using 600 watts out of, right?
Well, fuck, dude, I think I'm running at maybe 50% now. I mean, the intensity is at and I think, all it is right now is, I just moved into, you don't know my situation, but I just moved into this house and I just set my grow up, 4 months ago here, a new grow. Completely start over, had a rip carpet out in the whole 9 yards. Whereas at the old place, had something set up for the 8-9 years running very, very efficiently, running very well. And
you're used to it from muscle memory too, which makes it hard, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially what I did is I went back and I hung the lights. I hung them higher than I think I hung them lower than I should have, but I hung them higher than whatever. Ultimately, they were lower than they should have, and I should have spaced them out more than I should have. So now after this grow, damage done. I turned the intensity way down. I think when I had the problem, the lights were at 65% intensity, overall master intensity. They still run the same program, but the overall master intensity. And I think I got them turned down to, I think I got them turned down to 50% now. But essentially what I'm going to have to do after I tear this grow down, I'm also going to take a second to do some reorganization as well. But I'm going to tear the lights down, hang them absolutely as high as I can, and space them out a little bit more, and pay a little bit more attention to the grow.
And the higher we get those lights up, the wider our footprint becomes, right? So while we're not getting that intense max intensity hotspot, we're definitely getting a more even distribution of
I could maybe take lights out depending on how high I can get the lights.
So again, back to the mango thing, like I wouldn't just say, hey, everybody go buy mango stuff, but think grow that has individual bars that works for me because I was able to put as many as in it, right? So like it was all a matter of functionality for me that I was able exactly, right? So I'm able to say this is what works for me in my space because I only needed 7 bars in the 5x5 instead of 8 or instead of the 9 that come with your standard light, right? So it just comes back to, if I'm using it in my space because it's functional for me, and I feel confident telling you, as somebody looking for a light, yeah, this is what I work, and it works pretty flawlessly.
One of my favorite things about his new design is that they mount right to Unistrut. And I already have the Unistrut on the ceiling with the damn winch.
How is that not a thing already, right?
Like when I saw it, I'm like,
hangers.
that was freaking genius, because now I can interchange. They daisy chain the fucking lights together. Like, so you have one. I mean, everything about it makes total sense. These ones on the ICLs that I'm running now, the Trollmaster runs the program, controls the UV, the far red, and it's inside the canopy. I was going to say, I was wondering if you had your ears yet.
So here's what I want to see from the inner canopy light manufacturers, because you got Mango doing one, you got Kraft doing one. What's the other one that's getting made?
GML's got one.
GML's got one. All right. So all the inventors need to meet up with like their models, and they need to have a like a lightsaber war.
We'll film it live here on the Variable Podcast.
Yeah, this thing's pretty chunky. I don't know, man. That's
winner gets the patent.
Listen, I will broadcast this live straight from the Michigan Gems and Genetics here coming up on June 6th, 7th, and 8th. If we can get some flights, and some shipments.
Mango, if you're hearing this, you can use me as your ringer.
I've got some old. I've got like I don't know, 8 or 10 import lights, the old bar blurple lights. We could set something up.
Yeah,
for
dude.
those.
Let's find
Oh, man.
a big
I've got
tarp
some-
and make
Oh,
it
yeah.
happen.
I
Yeah,
got
we're
some
gonna do this in a
T5
big 100 by
LED
100,
replacements I
100 by
found.
100 AC infinity tent.
There you go. Take it outside, dude. I got a generator.
There you go.
Steven comes
So-
out with a 650. Just
Yeah, here. And then it just starts chucking it at me.
While I mention that, I
Use
think
it, people.
I have a bit of a hot take here.
let's go.
Fuck taking free lights from these companies for 4 months worth of work from you. I know it's awesome that
Oh, I see what you're saying.
we're all getting free stuff, but they're milking us all, man. Like
I would agree with you there.
we're-
It's been and I haven't done it for a long time, but man, I'll agree with you there. Like you said, just with the Google searches, they're getting
millions
crazy
of
amounts of free. Well, not free. I mean, advertising, but look what they're paying wholesale for their lights. That's what they're paying for your advertisement for the life of you using their product.
What do you think a 300-watt spider farmer light cost them to ship somebody in the States?
The $300 that I purchase.
Yeah, probably 35 bucks.
Fuck 30. Yeah.
Oh, and
Yeah,
they hit
40.
everybody up. Spider Farmer.
Maybe
Mars.
$100. Maybe $100.
Okay, $100 and they own you for 4 months.
Yep.
That's insane.
Yep.
Post 4 times a week for 4 months for $100.
No thanks.
I don't.
That's not a
wanna-
hot take,
And
bro.
so
That's not a hot take.
I did kind of the same thing you did there. Ish. When you kind of were hitting home when you were talking about using the products, the only ones that you use and promoting them. And that's where I've always took a stance as well. The only pay that I've ever received is through discount codes. Use my discount code, I get a little bit of a kickback. That's the only.
And that's a
But-
great incentive especially if you're already using this is the company I'm using and they're showing you some appreciation by giving you a code and you get a bit of a kickback every time. That's awesome. But for AC Infinity, like, hey, or Mars Hydro to spam every cannabis account on Instagram and be like, get this free light now, and everyone's like, oh my god, it's free light. And
Yeah, right.
I understand the allure because this shit's expensive and a lot of people want to be able to have access to this equipment, especially if it's coming in for free. But if you're trying to grow your account and be a cannabis influencer and get to 90,000 followers, nobody wants to see you panning the SharkMouse or the Mars Hydro logo of your light for 4 minutes before you get down to your plant, right? Like it's just a bad strategy for you, and it's benefiting them greatly for no effect on you, right? So what I think is beneficial for people who are looking for sponsorships or to get on board with a company that they like is genuinely just consider being open, honest, and forthright, working on your content specifically.
Do what you do. Be good at what you do.
Exactly. Just be good at what you do, and they're
Hit
going
the
to
eyes.
Worry about yourself.
Yep. And I just never took it to the stance where you did, or to where you did of requiring them to pay me, and that's not a shot at all. That's not even a try to dig.
Wait, hold on. Didn't you have rosin classes and shit?
Yeah, and which failed horribly, but
that wasn't always an option either, right? Like that took a considerable amount of work and negotiating, obviously. But there was that happened at a certain point when I think the actual point was AC Infinity had sent me a tent, and I had done a reel that had gotten 475,000 likes, 475,000 views, 10,000 likes, some of the 4,000 shares or whatever. And I saw my AC Infinity thing going ding, 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 ding with people buying shit. And I said, that's awesome and all, but how much money did you guys make tonight? And I said, how about this? How about you guys pay me $300 a month and I'll keep doing what I'm doing? And they laughed at me. And I said, okay, cool. And that was the last time you ever saw me post an AC Infinity thing. And
That's so stupid.
It's fucking pennies for them. You know what I mean? It's insanity.
a month. Like,
Oh,
and they
man.
said, no, we don't pay our.
They're
We don't
so
pay our
stingy with their fucking marketing budgets. I don't understand it.
I'll bring this up kind of as a side thing because I mentioned it to you about Steven and Agrotech, where it's like that relationship makes total sense in terms of marketing and sales, but there seems to be a hesitation to like engage that, and it just seems like a blunder to me. In the same way that AC Infinity, $300 a month for what, like a couple of deliverables a week? That's
plain.
That's wow. Yeah, I mean, like that's silly.
All these companies. Listen, how much is it going to cost you? I'll show you my analytics.
Yeah.
Here's the 112,000 people that look at my shit every week. How much will that cost you to reach on any other platform?
Google, yeah, fucking Facebook ads. You know what I mean? Like those impressions are, yeah, it's going to cost more than $300.
Is that worth $1,000 to you? I know for a fact it is.
Yeah.
Pains me to say it, but Hawthorne would be dumb not to make a move.
Well,
to like
okay, and that's what I wanted to bring up, Racers. Like a company like Hawthorne, right?
Yeah.
These corporations, these Monsanto Bayer types, right? Like they don't give a fuck and they're definitely not going to engage people like us. You know what I mean? Like we're talking grassroots companies like Pulse that got their start with GrowTube. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that. Those are the types of companies that we're going to be engaging with. I think in large,
frankly, it's the same thing with breeders for me. I think equal value to the plants that I grow for the people who breed them. Right? Everyone wants what genetics is that? What cut is that? And
I was wondering if that was going to get brought up because just like lights, man, you're getting a lot of value out of having a tester for your F2s that you're trying to release or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like that's. I mean, that's a whole nother grow, bro. Like,
and I think I get, I'm fortunate that I get sort of my quote unquote pick of the litter when it comes to what I want to grow, and you'll notice that you're never seeing some of those top names up there. I stick with guys like Pheno Hunter and First Class Genetics and people that really are out there working on their libraries. That I don't want to try this cross with that. I want to know that this is something you've been working on for 2 years and I'll put it to work for me. You know what I mean? It's I believe in the work that they're doing and not just trying to pump out a new hype name. I was on that compound in the Relentless tip for a long time. And every time I popped something from Relentless, it was something different than what I was seeing on his page. Why? Well, Relentless isn't sending me his cut from his garden of Trop Cherry 8. He's sending me the pack of seeds that came out of 30,000 that could be literally anything in the world, right? That's how seeds work. So, I mean, it's brilliant marketing on their behalf. Like you want to talk about like pure marketing gold. Chris Lynch from Compound Genetics is out of this world about it, right? He's got a golden green thumb for growing plants, and then he makes beans out of them. And most of those genetics are actually shit when they come out.
I've got a question for you that's been burning in my mind, and I don't think it's got brought up yet, but I've stepped away a couple times. So, gentlemen, correct me if I'm wrong. Have we asked him the question yet?
Oh,
no, we have
SharkMouse.
We jumped.
You haven't.
We don't talk. We haven't talked a lot about hash tonight, but we've got a few minutes left, and we all want to know, what does hash mean to you? Can you define it for us?
Not really. What it means to me.
To you, what is hash to you?
Hash to me is a complicated way of getting the things I'm trying to get out of the flower that I appreciate so much. And you can consider me a dinosaur all you want, but in order to go through the whole fucking process of heating up a goddamn cooker bowl like I'm smoking rock, and then like all these different devices and shit, I can't do it. And I love the taste of hash, but fuck the whole process involved.
You're cooking up a crack. Did you say crack? I mean, if you
hit it twice, Pedro says if you hit it twice, it's not crack.
You gotta minimally not be a fucking troller and try to be a little bit respectful. Come on.
I love hash.
You not dab?
I hate.
To be fair, I hate the process too. I wish
that's
I could
what it is.
Pick it up and hit it. And I love the taste, But
Hey, growing takes way longer than hash making, guys. What are we talking about?
I agree.
I
but
make
I
hash
have
because
I have a
storing
bucket
flowers.
here to smoke while I grow it, right?
Get a Puffco like a gentleman.
So
I
some
think-
of us don't like actually smoking the plant.
Right, of course.
Okay.
That makes me a
So-
dinosaur. I actually am fully
Okay.
aware that I'm a
Okay.
dinosaur about it, and flowers like
Okay. So the crack thing was over the line.
absolutely.
What define hash?
Okay, so hash would be the result of extracting the wanted compounds of the plant material biomass that I spent 3 months growing without the adulterant of the organic compounds included. Right?
I mean, it's up to you.
We're asking you
Man,
for
sticky-
your definition of hash.
It's too sticky weed. That's my definition.
I love that. I fucking love that. It's the weed that you need ISO to get off your fucking counter.
Now, that being said, like, you know, I love flower, but I don't really give a shit about it. Like, that's not where my drive and passion comes. My drive and passion is entirely in the cultivation aspect of it and all of the processes that are involved in cultivation and the biology of the cultivation, which is the same for me as I'll let you guys in on a little secret here. Instagram pissed me off enough that I'm about to do a 2x4 organic no-till bed, and I'm going to go get a cold room, and I'm going to get some washing equipment, and I'm going to fuck everybody up, and that's just going to be the way it is, so nobody can talk shit anymore. But
Do
that
it.
being,
Better put a 24/7
Do it.
live stream camera in there so we can all.
What
see
is
that
your
you're not
intent
fucking
behind
with
it?
Harvest right.
What's
just-
your-
Hey,
your
Harvest
intent?
right. He's doing hash. He's doing hash. Harvest right.
my intent is entirely
Low temp.
100% spite.
Low temp. Call him.
Oh,
I feel like
I
you know
love
what?
love low temps work. That would be my one of my sources of inspiration for taking.
They
over
have
that.
everything, and you know, fucking, I don't know.
That-
Call him.
I mean, I've been making hash for a while now, and I've gotten into the data aspect of it. And there's a lot you can do, and a lot of new stuff coming out. A lot of techniques that aren't figured out. We've talked about it before. You know, none of us know what the future is with this whole
Fact that we're
collection.
looking, right?
Yeah, but
Cryo,
there's a lot of
cryo,
variables. There's a lot of art to it. You know, machine wash versus paddle, and air dry versus freeze dryer, and you reintroduce terpenes, blah blah blah. You know, we've got into a lot of topics with it, but
and that's where. So when we're looking at like why, you know, how I feel about flour, how I feel about hash. If we're being honest, I don't give a shit. If you can get it on fire for me and I can smoke it, I'm pretty much happy. You know what I mean? As long as it tastes good to what I consider to taste good, and you know, it's an enjoyable experience in that sense. I don't really care if it's wax or butter or shatter or whatever, any other stupid names we have for all these things. At the end of the day, it's how it got to that I'm most interested in. That's kind of what I love the most.
I feel like SharkMouse was like raised in this northern Canadian family that grew owned this nursery, right? And it was like this ever growing nursery that was constantly expanding, and he was always having to learn the family business and the ins and outs of all these plants. And then one day his you know, he's like, Dad, I want a promotion. Like I'm ready to run the greenhouse. And he's like, no, son, you need to go to college. You need to get a biology degree if you want to run this shop, you know? And he's like, all right, Dad, I guess I'll do it for you, Dad, you know? And it's like, all right, I'm going to go get this biology degree. And the entire time for the 4 years that he was supposed to be getting that bachelor's degree, he was just reading Sun Tzu's The Art of War over and over and over again, trying to figure out how to fucking win these plants over.
Oh, man, that's true, man. You know how much I love that fucking narrative? That's I'm going to go with that from now on. So anybody who does know me, we're wiping the slate clean, and that's the narrative we're sticking with. From now on. Yeah, my stepdad was actually, you ever seen the movie Boiler Room?
Yeah.
Late 90s with Ben Affleck and
yeah,
that's what my stepdad did. He went to prison for like scamming people out of gems and shit. So it's not quite the same story, but I mean, at the end of the day, I mean,
That's a completely different story.
Not at all close, but you know, we'll go with it.
But I trust your judgment there. You should investigate hash. It would be a content farm for you. And honestly,
For
like, it's
real.
a
Holy
huge.
shit.
come to Michigan if you can. Like, fucking try some of this Fragoli hash. You know, pop
4.5
over.
hours away, bro.
Yeah,
We're
dude.
ready for you. We'll be at the bridge.
I'm absolutely in for it. Like I said, I've got a couple of things on the horizon I'm working with. I just started. I've been reading up on tissue culture for the last 4 months and how to integrate that properly. And one of my biggest challenges is going to be maintaining like a clean space, which I think is possible. But there, I've got a whole bunch of different things that this specific journey has branched me off into. Like I said, it's always been the learning aspect of it for me, and never really about, I know this is like blasphemous, but it's never been about the plant. Been about learning the plant. I don't know how to articulate that in a way that doesn't come across as stupid, but that's what it is.
It's a never ending thing, bro. Like there's we just keep creating with this plant.
I'm chasing a perfection I know I'll never get to, and that keeps me going, I guess.
That's okay. Yeah, that's okay. Hey man, and we're gonna be here for the ride along with you, and you're welcome back anytime. This was a great 2-hour conversation. SharkMouse, remind everybody where we can find you.
IG, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, SharkMouse Farms, at sharkmousefarms.com as well. If you're looking for massive amounts of peer-reviewed literature, merch, SOPs, anything you need, go check me out, sharkmousefarms.com. Thank you guys so much for having me. It was an absolute blast. Time flew.
Yeah.
Really did,
It really did. Cheers, everybody. Of course, we're on YouTube, Twitch, and X every Friday night live from 11 p.m. Eastern time to 1 a.m. Eastern time. And after the show on Spotify and wherever you get your podcasts, we'll see you next week.